They are signatories to Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. You can't pay a bribe and get a contract in Kenya. Here we don't follow it. So it is a green pass. Green pass for green bucks and kickbacks. Both of them. Over here also everything is through competitive bidding.
Right.
There is nothing that he has not got through competitive bidding. But then everything is rigged also, na? So a government which is in power for only 5 years enters into an agreement with a private person for a period of 30 years and allows the private person to exploit the consumer for the next 30 years, for which it is willing to pay a very small fraction as kickback to the decision maker. This is the model. You change the rules for them. I mean, look what they did in Bangladesh. They went and exploited them royally for whatever reasons. When you see the entire deal, you know that this is a deal which is based on commission. Coal is being imported from Australia. Plant is being set up in Jharkhand, which has got abundance of coal, and then the electricity is exported to Bangladesh. And that is why the Law Society has said that this is all shrouded in secrecy. Bring it out in the open. Which court will say don't, except our courts? Our courts, I mean, if Adani, all the whatever transgressions they have made in law which are blatant have been overlooked by SEBI, by our enforcement authorities, and by the courts. All three of them, and of course the government.
Mr. Agarwal, what would you really say? What kind of a commentary is it? And what are the big takeaways from this Kenyan court development? You were talking about the corruption model which Adani is trying to export. So I would want you to give your concluding comments.
No, the first thing that this government should do, or any government should do, is blacklist Adani from all further infrastructure projects. Let all the other industrialists bid.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. Now, there's a huge setback for Gautam Adani, and that is coming from the Kenya High Court, which has suspended $736 million deal, which amounts to about 6,189 crore. Now, what is the detail which is coming out of this? A Kenyan court has suspended $736 million, that is about 6,189 crore government agreement with Adani Group for the construction and operation of high voltage power transmission lines over a period of 30 years. Now, this decision could have significant implications for Kenya's energy structure and foreign investment climate. The suspension may also lead to legal challenges and further discussions about the project. Now, the Kenya High Court has said that the Law Society of Kenya basically has challenged this Adani Power Solution deal, saying that this deal is a constitutional sham and this is tainted in secrecy. So, was Adani Power violating rules? Because this is also what is said and petitioned by the Law Society, which says that it's a mandatory requirement that the public participation is important, and that apparently was bypassed by the Adani Group. And there's also a lot of murmur about the airport deal, over which there's a lot of anger in Kenya. So is Adani trying to expand his footprints on a similarly corrupt model which he's trying to execute in India? All these are very important questions. So we'll try and discuss all of this with a very special person, Supreme Court lawyer and activist Arun Agarwal. And Arun Agarwal has been very, very vocal about Adani's projects and what kind of corrupt practices he indulges in. And also, as far as the institutions are concerned, say, for example, SEBI. SEBI has been silent on it. And is Adani trying to export the same corrupt model to Kenya and other nations as well? These are some very important questions before everyone to see. We'll try and bring out the contrast as to what and how the systems in India function, and how the system of a small African nation like Kenya responds to these situations. Thank you so much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining on HW News. And is it really a big setback for Gautam Adani, given the fact that now the Kenya High Court has responded aggressively and said that we cannot go ahead with this deal?
Yes, it is a very big setback because this is a hat trick of setbacks. The first occurring in Bangladesh, then in Ceylon and Sri Lanka, what is Sri Lanka now, and now in Kenya. So, what we are seeing is that Mr. Adani travels with the entourage of the Prime Minister, or even if he doesn't travel, he is promoted directly by the Prime Minister so that some contracts, major contracts, infrastructure, developmental contracts may be given to Adani, and it is seen as a proxy for, I mean, these businessmen are seen to be the leading businessmen of this country who are helping to build infrastructure here, and they can do so similarly over there. What he does not reveal, what these people experience later on, that his whole model is based on a model of over invoicing, corruption, and milking the consumer by bits and bleeding them by bits and pieces so that his corruption goes unnoticed. Now, this model may be very successful in India, but it doesn't cut ice in foreign countries because they are not accustomed to this type of deal. I mean, we are having a hyper corruption which is, with the passing of decades, is getting worse and worse, whereas they have not experienced that type of
Agarwal,
corruption. So
the fact
their
that this
development level may not be that great. Pardon?
no, you were talking about the corruption model of Adani, of over invoicing and other malpractices which he indulges in. Now, how big is this an embarrassment for Prime Minister Modi, for India as well?
No, it is it is an embarrassment for every Indian. If the perception, like in America, if the perception is that Indians work hard, they're sincere, they are savvy in technology, and they built a reputation. Similarly, if you go somewhere else and if they say Indian industries are corrupt, they're not only corrupt in their country, but they are promoting corruption in our country, naturally our image will suffer. We don't want, and this is not the true image. I mean, Adani cannot be the benchmark of the character of an Indian person. But before you come to the entire thing, I'll explain to you. See, I have considerable experience in this infrastructure project because I spent 2 years of my life fighting a infrastructure foreign project called Cogentrix, which you will not believe had a capital of less than $2 lakh, and it was trying to set up an energy plant of 1,000 megawatts for which it didn't have money. The debt equity ratio used to be 3:1, and yet our people, ignoring the big industries like Tata and all, went and did a deal with the Adani, with the Adani of USA's Cogentrix, and they came over here. I had not done my law at that time, and I had the biggest lawyers against me. And yet the court saw through that corrupt deal, and the proposition over there was that there was a loss of 30 to 40,000 crores to the Indian consumer on a project which was then of 4,000 crores. So what I am trying to say is, and let the viewers know, that though the projects may be only of 5,000, 6,000 crore, but the consumer may be milked for 10 times that amount. And why is it so? Because by that capital or by that electricity plant, over the life of that project for 30 years, they produce power which is worth 3 or 4 lakh crores. So because the power produces 3 or 4 lakh crores, and if there is 10% overpricing in that, then naturally you lose 30,000 crores, which is a huge amount. I mean, it is just not a matter of losing, say, 5,000, 6,000 crores. And it is over a period of time. And because you are allowed type of this thing, so you can very easily give 30-40% of the project cost as commission, which
True.
the decision makers, they do not realize why they are getting this hefty commission. And
No,
then they
but
have,
in fact, Mr. Agarwal, the very fact that the Law Society of Kenya, which initiated this entire court case, they have argued, that the agreement with the Adani's company constitutes a constitutional sham. Now, calling a deal a constitutional sham, and if you think from the perspective of the Kenyan government or Kenya as a nation, what are they trying to say? That it's a constitutional sham. What does it really mean? What is the Law Society trying to tell the people by saying this?
no, no. First of all, there was no competitive bidding. So they're asking who else bid. There was an American company
Energy
who
Minister.
had not even heard about the deal, but they were willing to bid. So if there
No,
is
but
no competitive,
I did read it somewhere in one of the reports that the energy minister of Kenya last month had said that there was a competitive bidding process which the Adani Power had won. That is what he said. I read it somewhere.
nobody came forward. You see, this is one of the things that the minister and the law society have to prove before the court.
Okay.
See, if tomorrow, if there is another aspect of it, if a bidder knows that there is going to be, he has to pay 10%, 20% upfront, and if the laws of his country prohibit from paying a bribe, which all the American and the developed, they are signatories to Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. You can't pay a bribe and get a contract in Kenya. Here we don't follow it. So it is a green pass for green bucks and kickbacks, both of them. So what happens is that these people are very well aware. So then
Hmm.
is there a effect? Over here also everything is through competitive bidding.
Right.
There is nothing that he has not got through competitive bidding.
Hmm.
But then everything is rigged also, na? How you rig it? There they say, ki, look, is there a effective competitive bidding?
I
So
was I
in
was
that they
reading.
have discovered that what the minister is saying is totally wrong, and there were American companies were willing to bid, but when they realized that this is a kickback based this thing, they didn't bid. Why should they waste their
But
time and money?
right. No, but Mr. Agarwal, I was reading a tweet of CPIM, and CPIM Speak is the Twitter handle, which says, and I'm going to read it exactly, that Modi's Achhe Din for Adani model exported to Kenya. A court has stayed Adani Group's bid to run an airport in Kenya. Workers have gone on strike against the Adani takeover, and former Kenyan PM Raila Odinga now says that Narendra Modi introduced him to the Adani Group. So now this is regarding the airport project, which over which there's a lot of anger, and I saw the CPIM Twitter handle saying this. So can this deal now also put Prime Minister Modi into trouble? Because if the former PM of Kenya is saying that Adani was introduced by Prime Minister Modi, now what would one really say?
How can it put the prime minister into a problem? He is the sovereign of a sovereign state. And for all intents and purposes, he is the law, and he considers himself the law, not only terrestrial but extraterrestrial. So how can it be that anything can be done on him? I mean, it doesn't happen that you can, as a head of state, he can be in trouble at all. And that is why everything is done with impunity. No, what you have to understand is what is a power purchase agreement and why this protest is there. See, a power purchase agreement is entered into by the government with a private party. Though the government purchases the power, it goes ahead and it sells the power to the consumer. And the money and the kickback, the cost of the electricity, the profit on the electricity, plus the kickback that is paid to the government officials, that is recovered from the consumer. Because it is recovered bit by bit, say by making the electricity more expensive by 50 paisa, the consumer who is not in a position to protest, it is not a commodity that you can purchase from the market. You have to purchase that electricity. It is an essential commodity with a monopoly. So you don't have a choice. and you have to pay what the government asks. And they collect it, and these people keep on collecting the extra revenue for 30 years to come. So a government which is in power for only 5 years enters into an agreement with a private person for a period of 30 years and allows the private person to exploit the consumer for the next 30 years, for which it is willing to pay a very small fraction as kickback to the decision maker. This is the model. And it is a very simple model which anybody, if it is simplified, can understand. What is the model of business of Adani?
Right.
What they do
So,
further after that, no, let me finish.
right.
What they do further after that, because they increase and over invoice the price of the coal or the capital equipment, the power equipment, or the maintenance charges, this money they keep abroad. They bring it through different channels by money laundering, and they show it as an investment in their own company, in the name of these shell companies, this thing, and increase their stake from 75% to 92%. Rest of it, the life insurance company and other bakras buy. So there is no floating stock, and then they increase their price. So you see, this is a complete circuit of how this corruption is going on and how
Right.
they have become the wealthiest person or the third
But if
wealthiest
you look
person in
at
the world.
what you are explaining, sir, and this is exactly what the Law Society has claimed. And they have said that this deal lacks transparency and it fails to uphold the essential constitutional principles. Now, what kind of difference do you really see when these things come out in India and the way our systems respond, our courts, our institutions, whether it is SEBI or any other institution, and how Kenya's Law Society has responded to it? Why can't we have check dams like Kenya Law Society, who are so vibrant, who are so robust, and they've detected this discrepancy in the deal?
You see, what is happening is this: the contract is between the politician and the private person, and the payment is made by the citizens, by the consumer. But he has no say in that contract. He doesn't know what contract has been entered. Now, how is it possible that somebody mortgages my interest, contracts on my behalf without even letting me know? So that is where transparency comes in. Now, every consumer may not have the wherewithal to vet that power purchase agreement, but they are certainly knowledgeable and good sanitarians who can vet those projects. And so the logical thing should be for any government to place that contract in the public domain, which these people again did not do, to which this law society is protesting and the court is upholding. You are exploiting me, and then you are not even letting me know what contract that you have entered. And so the basic thing that is happening there, which is not happening here, is that the contract has to be placed in the public domain. Then the people can find out. Suppose they have said that coal will cost so much. They know the international price of coal as of now. They will challenge that. So suppose they say power equipment will cost this much. All this is, see, today in the world of internet, all this is not something which cannot be found out. Then they will say, no, this can be produced with, and plus there are other industrialists in Africa itself, in and around, who are setting up big infrastructure project at a lesser cost in Africa. So just because you are going to Kenya, it doesn't mean that Kenyans will pay a higher. So there is a comparative cost parity also that they can determine. Here you don't want to determine. You don't want any agency to look into it. You don't want the consumer to look into it. And that is why every contract can be given to Adani at whatever rate. You tailor made the contract for them. You change the rules for them. I mean, look what they did in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, they went and exploited them royally for whatever reasons. And when you see the entire deal, you know that this is a deal which is based on commission. Coal is being imported from Australia. Plant is being set up in Jharkhand, which has got abundance of coal. and then the electricity is exported to Bangladesh. Now, and when the new government, and when you compare it with the existing rates, these rates are way beyond what they are paying. When the new government comes, in spite of a foreign exchange crunch or whatever, they choose to abrogate, or they choose not to pay for what Adani had been producing. Now they are stuck with this investment. What does the government do? It first of all changes the policy. It says first that the power plant, which was meant only for export, for which lot of concessions were given, and the Jharkhand government was armed twisted, environmental clearance, pollution in India, electricity over there. So they had already changed the rules for 100% export project. Now they say no. They can also sell power in India. When they can sell power in India, Rajasthan government comes to the rescue and they enter into a PPA instead of the Bangladesh government. So now the production can go on, and government of Rajasthan is substituted for Bangladesh. So you see, all this thing can happen over here. This is a paradise for the corrupt people in infrastructure. I mean, you can't imagine when I say it is a paradise. It is a paradise, but you can't export this model because people over there, they are not accustomed to this type of corruption. They are not accustomed to keeping quiet. They are not accustomed to non-transparent deals, and that is why the Law Society has said that this is all shrouded in secrecy. Bring it out in the open. Which court will say don't, except our courts? Our courts, I mean, if Adani, all the whatever transgressions they have made in law, which are blatant, have been overlooked by SEBI, by our enforcement authorities, and by the courts. All three of them, and of course the government. So this is a very strong indictment of the way our institution functions and way the institutions in Kenya function. I mean, what they have said is just the right thing. And that is why when you're talking about this competitive bidding does not mean a rigged competitive bidding. It means a genuine competitive bidding, and the entire structure of capitalism is based on competition, genuine competition. And anybody who plays foul with it is promoting monopoly and crony capitalism and corruption. That is what is happening.
But now what does this mean? Will Adani have to face scrutiny now in Kenya? And likewise, if he faces scrutiny in Kenya, there are other nations also where he's trying to increase the footprints of his trade and his projects. So will those projects also be under scrutiny if there are similar, cases in the court?
No. As far as Kenya is concerned, most probably when the project details come out in the open, the project will be abrogated. You see, and so will the airport, because people will get wiser with time. They will realize what they have been doing here, and it will not happen over there. So, and the other thing is, say, you take in Sri Lanka also. The new president he campaigned on this, that this 500 megawatt so-called green energy plant, we will not go through it if I come to power. So there also, so ultimately they should, you never know, learn their lessons, that if you are going to export this corrupt model abroad, you will get uncovered, and your money that you invest by way of whatever, getting the sanctions and preparing the documents and all that will go to waste. So then they will confine themselves to India. Definitely, this is not an exportable model, because any country which has got a thinking, it is not rocket science, it is mere calculation. What I'm talking about, if you reduce it to a paper, a cost accountant and a good chartered accountant can uncover wherever this type of corruption is there. See, I'm reminded of my earlier Cogentrix case, which I was arguing. There was one very good thing, whatever one may say. I mean, this foreign investment in power was the brainchild of none other than NKP Salve, the father of Harish Salve. So he was a chartered accountant. He understood what was going on because we had a debate on a particular channel, and he realized what whole tariff was dollar denominated. While promoting this, what they did was that they had Terry and a German organization and American this thing to vet that power project. And in the vetting, whatever report came, that was in the public domain, which I got hold of. So there it clearly said that they had increased the or over invoiced the capital cost and the energy cost by 10 and 15%, which I showed to the court, and what it would mean. Here there is no such vetting. Here they show a import coal of say 3,000 or 4,000 calorific value and show it as 6,000, and the difference in price is 3 times. They collect it as hawala. Everything is known. They pollute over here. The case is pending in Supreme Court. Nobody is taking it up. So this is what I'm saying. This is the wild west of corruption in this country. And I'm saying it with full responsibility. Because I have fought corruptions which was much smaller, much less 20, 25 years back. And what has happened is they learned from that model. Okay, we can do it like this. So they mastered it. They hired very expensive lawyers. You will not believe a document which is called the PPA, Power Purchase Agreement. The lawyers to draft it take something like 100 crores. And it must be worth, it must be 150 or 200 pages. So that they tighten up all the loopholes that are there so that there cannot be any type of challenge, and they bind you to this. See, one of the things that they objected in Kenya was that the airport is a 30-year project and there will not be another airport within a 50-mile radius. Yes. This is what is happening in India.
No, and Law Society also said that it's a huge loss of money, job losses, and it's not value for money. This is what they pointed out.
Yes, that is exact this thing. We don't know what is value for money. That is what is, they've used the right term. We never get value for money. The consumer doesn't get value for money. He is accustomed to being ripped off, like in his taxation, which are not efficiently spent, or roads which are not maintained. You pay 3 types of taxes. You pay taxes on petrol, you pay taxes on car, and after that you pay taxes on the toll also. And also the road tax. So,
but Mr. Agarwal, but does this development by the Kenya court also now raise questions on the broader implications for foreign investment and infrastructure development in Kenya? Does all that now go to a halt as far as Adani is concerned?
Kenya is not dependent on Adani or India for its development. I mean, what role have they had in developing the tourism in Masamarai and all those people? All those places, have they done anything? I mean, the last time they tried to import 6 cheetahs from some country, African country, all of them died. So they cannot emulate what they are doing over there. There also, there are other countries which are having infrastructure at an efficient cost.
But do you think that Adani and even our government, our systems, will they learn any lessons? Do they treat it as some kind of a rebuff from another country? It's such a big embarrassment. This is what we've been discussing. But will there be any learning lessons for Modi and Adani, both of them?
No, we learn lessons every day. We have people, but will the government allow us to learn lessons? Everything is whitewashed. So, I mean, I would be very proud to have a organization like the Law Society over there, which speaks on behalf of the people. Where is the voice?
But here, when you have the civil society people speaking on behalf of the Janta, you have them jailed, then you slap cases against them. This is what happens in India.
Yes, and then the courts are there always to protect them. The laws are being made to protect Adani. You see, so many changes in laws were made deliberately, both by SEBI and both by Enforcement Directorate. One followed the other, in order to camouflage the identity of the person investing on behalf of Adani's in Adani shares in India.
True.
So I mean, when you are being corrupt, you take care of all these things. Now, first change the law, then see to it to have a friendly judge like Arun Mishra. I'm not naming him. Mr. Dushant Dave has, I
Yeah.
mean, named him. Who can imagine that this is the level to which our judiciary will sink? So what I'm saying is that, look, we have very good people. We have competent people, but they are not allowed to function. And all these institutions and laws have been captured by the wrong type of people, which is going to do, and which is already doing, tremendous harm to the country in the long run.
Right. True.
And that
And
is the
also
tragedy.
one point which I missed out, and then another question, and then we'll wind up the show. That the Law Society also has said that the public participation, which is mandatory according to their rule, has not been done. Now, public participation is taken very lightly in India, but there the Law Society is pointing out that the public participation was mandatory and that process was bypassed. What does it really show? And public participation is actually taken very lightly in the country, at least in India.
No, it is. I mean, all these projects which were supposed to come within the area of the forest area and the villagers, they were supposed to be consulted, and how money was spent, and in spite of that, the activists got in, and how the DM became the agent of the corporate and forced this thing and got all those clearances. There were quite a good number of projects which failed during the Congress regime. But this government knows how to steamroll dissent, and they are very ruthless in it. So they did that, and now the environmental clearances and all have gone for a toss. I mean, mining is taking place wherever the corporate interest lies. They get advance waiver. I mean, that type of waiver is given to Adanis and all. I mean, in Jharkhand they were given waivers. So all that, you see, you are making and then the Supreme Court has this peculiar thing that it is a policy decision, we will not look into it, and they should be allowed play in the joints, and the majority has spoken, we will not look into the details, how the villages protested and their voice was not heard. So where is the redressal mechanism?
True.
That is
But yes,
the thing that is lacking in this country.
right, absolutely. And it really points out the gaping holes within our system, whether it's our courts, whether it is the manner in which the institutions function in our country. And in a small nation like Kenya is actually showing the mirror and also teaching a lesson to Adani. But coming to the last bit, and then I'm going to wind up the show, that if you look at this whole development in entirety, Mr. Agarwal, what would you really say? What kind of a commentary is it? And what are the big takeaways from this Kenyan court development? You were talking about the corruption model which Adani is trying to export. So I would want you to give your concluding comments.
No, the first thing that this government should do, or any government should do, is blacklist Adani from all further infrastructure project. Let all the other industrialists bid, except them, and hold an inquiry into and make all the documents where they have been given infrastructure public in the public domain, which they should have anyway done, because the consumer is paying for it directly or indirectly. Let them be scrutinized by the civil society as well as those who have judicial knowledge. And then if they find that everything is hunky-dory, again greenlist them and let them introduce them this thing. But until that happens, if you don't do this particular, don't take this drastic step, then bit by bit, all our prime properties will be colonized by the equivalent of East India Company, which did not have much to exploit, whereas now the West India Company has far greater things to exploit, the prime assets, and due to development of decades of development. So this drastic step has to be taken. There is nothing wrong. They have got enough of the Indian cake to subsist for 700 generations. What of 7 generations or 70 generations? So let them stop, let them consolidate, and then after that, if there is let there be a due process which never took place earlier. Let there be transparency, and if they get a if the people come to the conclusion that they are benevolent and patriotic capitalist, go ahead. Give them the entire nation.
True. Thank you so much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining on HW News. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was being sarcastic, incidentally.
Stay ahead with our cutting edge news app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.